back to Heart-Led Changemakers, where leadership breeds, culture heals, and organizations remember that people are the heart of every strategy. Today's guest is Sarah Cassells, Director of Office 81, culture consultant, organizational alchemist, and the human-centered visionary, quietly transforming the way leaders build, support, and sustain their teams. Sarah brings over 2 decades of experience across office management, executive support, change management, psychology, anthropology, and organizational leadership. She blends the precision of the city with the calm intelligence of the country, operating from the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. And while doing that, she's supporting leaders across Australia to create workplaces that actually function and work. Her approach is rooted in deep sciences of human behavior. Her philosophy is grounded in justice, clarity, and communication. And her work, my favorite part, is that it's anything but cookie cutter. Sarah builds cultures where people feel seen, heard, understood, and where organizational change becomes sustainable, not performative. In today's conversation, we're going to explore the psychology behind truly effective organizational culture, why remote leadership requires emotional intelligence and precision, how human-centered change management liberates teams and elevates performance, and what it means to lead with clarity, calm, and connection in a world addicted to speed. This is for leaders ready to create spaces where people thrive, not just produce. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maryanne. That introduction was amazing. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you here because your work has so many different really cool components to it. And your career weaves, as I mentioned, the psychology part, the anthropology part, the operational part, the law part, and the organizational leadership part. But I'm interested in your perspective, what's the thread that ties all of that together?
Well, it's definitely the people, actually. So there's different elements. I mean, at the core of every organization is the people that are working in that organization, and also the people that that organization serves. So when we're talking about all of those things, so psychology, anthropology, the legal aspects, there's different those things impact different in different ways on a daily basis, right? So you've got your risk management, but you've also got your operational strategies, and you've also got, ensuring that you have a good culture and a safe environment, whether that's physical or psychological or emotional or culturally safe environment for the people that are actually working with you and interacting with your organization.
Yes. And when you look at Office 81, what inspired that business? What inspired that work and all of those things coming together?
Well, I had been working in traditional employment for a really long time, and the idea of having my own business was something that I'd always wanted to try, but I wasn't really sure about what I wanted that to look like. And so COVID was an awesome opportunity, gave me the perfect opportunity to go back to university, do some postgraduate studies, and I decided that I was going to do psychological science. And then during that last year, when I was actually doing my honors research, I all the puzzle pieces just started falling into place, and I kind of had a bit of an epiphany. I realized that, oh, all of these things that I have, that I learned when I was an undergraduate, studying anthropology and studying law, and now studying psychology, kind of are just all fitting together, and I could see how these things, if we were to combine them in a way that helped organizations create a culture or an environment that actually benefited the people. Because, I can't change the world in the sense that we all need to work, right? We all need to have a job. We need to earn an income to survive. But I did think, one of the things that I might be able to help with it is actually help people be happy or at least content in their workplace, right? So to create a workplace that actually works for them as well as the organization, rather than feeling like they have to fit themselves into a space that wasn't really made for them. I want that space to actually reflect who the people are within that organization, while also aligning with the vision and values of the organization itself.
Yes, and that, that is a very similar philosophy to me as well. It is about making sure that everyone that is impacted is involved, and that human aspect is so key. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that that's woven into your work. You say, I've heard you say, what makes people tick, and you
Mm-hmm.
sort of bring that in. But how does that shape the way you support teams?
I do a lot of observation. So I always say I'm a bit of a people watcher, right? I like to watch people and I like to see how they actually interact with one another. And I take very close notice to what they are saying and also what they're not saying. So quite often, um, you know, I've heard it all before. Like I've been doing, like I've been involved in traditional employment for a long time, and so I understand what they're saying, but also what they're not saying. I'm picking up on the hidden meaning. I'm reading between the lines, and so that enables me to ask them the hard questions, and say, is it something more to do with this aspect of your job, or is it more to do with this aspect of the organization? And then kind of figure out where the problem lies, because the issues with people in an organization, they tend to exist at some level in every organization. So the idea is like to recognize that. Don't pretend that it's not happening, but to recognize that, not everyone's going to get along, for example. There's going to be some people that appear to be pulling more weight than others, right? Which can be upsetting. Then you've got also the pressures that are involved with the workload. So it's recognizing all of those things, and that there's people who are actually impacted by those, right? And so when you're asking them, what do you need? And they might be telling you from a really superficial level, right? Oh, I just want this to be more efficient. But what does it actually mean for them from a personal, emotional aspect? Like, how is making things more efficient actually going to make their life better overall? Because, like I said, we don't get to choose, whether or not we have to work. We have to work to survive, and so let's create the work environment in a way that makes it positive and beneficial, so people are actually getting something out of it and also feel like they're contributing at the same time.
Yes, and that's incredibly hard and challenging to facilitate when you're restructuring processes and systems, which is what you do. It is um I think it's essential to be able to feel into what is not being said. I'll weave that into my work too, but it is systems and processes have such a significant impact on culture that um it is hard to facilitate and coordinate that across multiple sites. So you can be in one site, but then there's another site that might feel disconnected. And I'm curious,
Mhm.
how do you coordinate those aspects? Is it this? Have you got a different approach for central spaces and those that are sort of spread out all over the place?
Mhm. I'm sort of, when you talk about people who are spread out all over the place. So I have, since starting my business, have worked with organizations that are global. So they've got offices in different parts of the world. So, there's a whole lot of factors that come into play. Like you want teams to be able to communicate really well. But then you've also got time factors in there, right? So you've got time differences, and people aren't going to be necessarily resolving problems in real time, right? Because of that lag. So my philosophy is always thinking that the systems that we're going to implement should remove friction, right? They shouldn't create it. So and so it's a very strategic approach that I take. if we're talking about an organization, the best way to like think big, right? So you always got the big picture in mind, but you might be starting small just with one team, right? And you've got to be strategic in the team that you're starting with, right? So there might be an element of an organization where everything kind of revolves around that core element, right? And so you start there. That might be like your finance team, or if it's a charitable organization, they might have a trust team, for example. And so you start with that core team, and you work with them to build something, but always keeping in mind that you want something that's able to be expanded on, right? So that you can start, once you've got that core system in place, you can start integrating everyone else into it, and like I said, to create a more seamless across organization system, rather than just having different systems for different teams. You kind of want
Yeah.
to work them into one core system. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, facilitating that across multiple locations, yeah, that would obviously be challenging, but it is really great to hear that, it starts, where you are, but keeping all of those aspects in mind. And like when you think about organizations, that some are in resistance to change. I mean, it's a human nature. Everyone sort of braces when they think about change. And so how do you know, like, what's the signal that you feel that they're ready to go through that transformation?
Well, it's their journey. This is how I think about it. It's actually their journey. I'm just coming along for the ride. Do you know what I mean? So, um, I'm just maybe there to help them, ensure that the things that the feedback that we've received from other team members or from the organization, like the executive level might have specific requirements, and then you've got the very niche needs of the people that make up a team, right? And so we're trying to find a solution that actually brings those two things together, and at the end of the day, I'm there to help people on that journey to make it happen. And so, sometimes it might, we might, it might be a bit hit and miss. Like the first thing that we try might not be the right solution, right? But that's the thing, right? You got to test it with the people who are going to be using it. And you've got to test it with the executive to make sure that it's ticking those boxes. So yeah, like I'm less about, I tend to be brought into an organization and asked to help when they've recognized that there's an issue, but they don't necessarily have the skills or the expertise or even the time. Sometimes it's just a time thing, to be able to make it happen. And so I'm just there to help facilitate it, I suppose. It's probably a good
Yes.
way to describe it, as more of a facilitator. So I don't come in and say, this is what you need to do. These are your problems, XYZ. You need to do A, B, C to fix it. I don't do that. I work with the people with people who recognize that there is a need for change. They just don't necessarily know what that change looks like. And so that's where I come in and I help them on that journey. And like I said, we might test, multiple different things before we find the one that ticks all those boxes.
Yes. And when you think about culture, there are so many different components to what affects it. Systems and processes is such a significant one. It really is a big foundational piece. And what I really love about your approach with that is you're not, you don't use cookie cutter tools or initiatives, things that just look good on paper. You go deeper than that, and you care very much about people. What do you think it is about your work that actually makes these transformations and the impact on culture stick?
I think it's because I actually take the time to listen to people.
Yeah.
So if someone says to me, I'm feeling incredibly overwhelmed by my workload, like there's just a lot of steps, and so I'll sit down with them and I'll talk about what they're actually doing and understand, try and see things from their perspective, right? And if I can understand what it is how the issue arises based on what they're currently doing, then I have a better idea of how to find the solution. So it might be like, okay, these 5 steps, can we automate them? For example, right? Let's remove some of that manual workload and see what we can automate. Or maybe it's just, maybe there's a communication breakdown somewhere between a team, but between people in a team or across teams. So what can we do to think about to improve that? And that works really well when you're talking about teams that are located in different spaces, right? They're not necessarily in the one office. So for me, it's understanding what people are currently doing, like getting a really good idea. And that might, like I said, I observe people a lot. So I'll sit there and watch people do and say, walk me through it. Like walk me through what your brain is doing right now, so I can understand exactly how you're doing this and how you're perceiving it. And then I take that information and then I start making suggestions. And that's what I do, right? I make suggestions. So I say, hey, have you thought about trying this option? And if they haven't, we might give it a go. And if it doesn't work, then we'll try something else. So because that's really important to have systems that are flexible, that can actually adapt to the people that are using them without affecting the overall operations of an organization, because not everyone works the same. So you want to be able to take that into consideration when you're building new systems or adapting existing systems to the people who need to use them.
Yeah, of course. And I guess that's the bridge with the psychology and the anthropology and the way that you influence. I guess that's the way you map and interpret and redesign what is happening in the organization and in their ecosystem. And I think that's brilliant. And I'm interested to know, do you feel like that's a really great way to give like voice to individuals in the organization that may not have been able to share or express the impact that different processes and different systems are having?
Absolutely. People often recognize that something's not working for them, but they take it personally. Quite often they think it's them, that something is actually wrong with them as an individual. And it's not. It's just that the way something has always been done just it's not fit for purpose for them personally, right? And so you want flexibility in your systems and processes that help people be able to do their work in an effective and efficient way, while checking all the boxes, but also reflecting on the way that they process information, the way that they focus, the way, some people are better at focusing than others, for example. Like, so what can we do here to help people focus better if they're easily distracted, for example? That's something that I have to deal with a lot. Yeah. Is people who are easily distracted, and then coming up with ways to help them focus, structuring time, like communicating with people who might want to speak to them, removing interruptions and distractions. So that quite often works into it, as well as like really things that we take for granted, right? When we run businesses, like things like time management and planning. Right. So a lot of the time it's just the time management and the planning thing. Like they don't really have a good understanding of the workload that they have, the time that they need to do it in. And so if we're able to, pull that apart and break it down and test different ways for them to be able to manage their workload, then quite often that actually assists in developing a better system, because then we're seeing, okay, you know what, this person has too much work for one person, right? And so that's where that's where we might start thinking, okay, you probably need another team member here. Do you know what I mean? Like, because when people don't have a good understanding of the work that they're doing because they haven't properly planned or they haven't properly organized their time, then they can always feel like they're chasing their tail. And that's something that causes a lot of workplace stress, a lot of pressure. It can affect culture because people just, they're worked up and they're angsty all the time. So I really try to focus on those type of critical areas that remove that pressure, that remove that stress. and then work that into the systems and processes themselves.
Yes. And again, cultivating culture around all of that is complex. And that's why there's like such a beautiful synergy with your work and mine too, because it is that angst is caused by sometimes, like what you were saying, it's their own ability to focus. There are different, not that I like labels or anything like that, but you've got, those with ADHD and ADD, all of those things. And you've got people who have got some complex trauma who find it hard to digest information and regulate, so they're not able to concentrate. There's so many reasons for that, but the impact of into the inner office dynamics between departments, it's that feels like an unspoken issue and impact in different ways. And I don't again, this is why I love the work that you're doing, because you delve into that. You bring the truth of what is going on in the way that they're connecting, in the way that work is being transferred from one department to another, and their communication, like how that's relating and how that's woven into the day-to-day. And it is, I think the communication part is especially important. Obviously, I'm very passionate about that side of things, but how do you maneuver the language to create harmony and direction inside those teams?
So when we're talking about language, again, that comes down to observation. Like I do spend different organizations tend to have their own very specific type of speak, right? So they might have their own acronyms or certain words or certain ways of referring to things or talking about things. And that can be influenced by a lot of different aspects within an organization, right? So, and that's where the observation comes in, because I want to hear what they're saying about the organization and about their work experience, and then actually observe it. So I get a true understanding of what it is they mean. And then when I'm, presenting solutions or making suggestions about things that might resolve certain aspects of the issues, I repeat the language that they've used in the past, and say, okay, you've presented this problem. Perhaps something that we could try is this, because and then kind of, break it down to say, this is why I think maybe it will work. And then sort of let them think about it. And then they might say, yeah, all right, let's give it a try. Or they might say, oh, I don't really think that's going to work. But, yeah, and then I'll just make another suggestion. I don't take it personally if it's something that I suggest, because it is feeling as well. Like it's putting your feelers out there to, and test the waters a little bit to say, hey, what do you think about this? But, communication, you were talking about communication, Maryanne, that is so critically important. And I'm finding that, through the work that I'm doing, that it's becoming more complex as different generations sort of enter the workplace. We've now got organizations that have boomers at one end and then Gen Z at the other end. And they think about the world, they interact with the world completely differently. Yep. Right. And so organizations need to be willing to adapt and evolve to be able to bring in those younger people. Because if you're not bringing in fresh staff and, with they're incredibly talented, incredibly articulate people, but they work and communicate in different ways. Right. So it's about understanding what they are doing so that the organization can meet their communication needs as well. Because if, with Gen Z, and it's one of my favorite things about Gen Z, right? It's because if they don't like something, if something's not working for them, they're just going to get up and leave. And I love it, because they're like, and they have the confidence to go, you know what, this isn't working for me. I need to go and find something that does. Do you know what I mean? Like, and where I think about, oh my God, I spent so many years of my life in jobs I hated because I didn't want to disappoint anyone. And I convinced myself that there was nothing better out there. And then you've got Gen Z, you're just like, nope, this doesn't work. I'm going to find something else. And so, but, in that, there is the risk of losing some incredible people that could be with the organization for the long term and do amazing things for that organization. And so it's kind of trying to find that balance where you need to be, like I said, an organization needs to adapt and evolve to be able to bring these people into the fold, like the younger generations into the fold, and make them feel like they are actually a part of that group and they're a valuable contributor to the team, and that they actually do have something of value to offer. And a lot of the time, people have never had that opportunity before. It's sort of Gen Z expects it, right? Whereas people like me and, you're the elder millennials, your Gen Xers, kind of are more like, we're used to coming into a job and being told how things are, and then we just replicate it. Yep. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really work anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, when you've got such a diverse mix of staff, absolutely, the old, and this is why I love your work again, is because it's not an old framework. And this is why organizations are still having so many issues with culture, and they're having the same impact. It's the same thing over and over again with employee engagement, is because they're using old frameworks that just don't work now. There was a time and a place for it, but we're 20, 30 years on, you can't. And a lot of the time, it's a new face or a new mask on an old framework. And when you've got such a diverse mix of people, you have to try different things, and you have to use what you know in a really innovative way. And I'm curious, when you are talking to leaders, like when you're having conversations, what is it that they typically want to avoid, like during that change and that transformation? What are they trying to avoid? Is it more like on an emotional level, or is it around control? What are you seeing?
It really depends. Like, it really depends on the personality. Like, I have, worked with some executives or leaders, in an organization who are incredibly, flexible, right? They're quite happy for you. They go, you know what, this is your wheelhouse. You go do what you need to do. Maintaining business as usual. Like, you don't want to interrupt operations too much. You want to try and work something in so people can continue to do their work, but you're making those changes at the same time. So it's like a staged, gradual process. And then, there are the other leaders who do want to, they have a real issue with relinquishing control, right? So, and that takes a little bit more convincing. And usually those people that, I think one of the biggest problems with organizations is that they're always looking for a quick fix. Because by the time that they realize that they need to deal with the problem, it's quite chaotic and it's got quite bad. And so they're looking for something to fix the issue quickly. But you can't, like, people don't work like that. Like, people, some people are more receptive to change than others. So you might need to work harder with certain elements of an organization than others. And so it's just bringing, spending the time to build that trust with those leaders, like really getting to know them, taking time to have in-depth one-on-ones with them to really pull out what it is that they need, and then explaining to them, well, you've told me this, right? This means this for your team. To maintain consistency, operational effectiveness, I think that maybe we need to look at things this way. And the way that I work is that I'm very much focused on doing things in a staged process. I always say to people, like, I don't come in with a quick fix. When I start, I don't come in with any preconceived ideas whatsoever. I come in, I observe, I listen, and then I go away and think about, okay, what might work here? like, all my toolkits, right? I start pulling on all the research that I've done in different areas, and then like all my own personal experience, job experience. I kind of pull all these things together and think about, well, this worked really well for this team. I don't think this framework is gonna be particularly beneficial. So what can we do to make something work? And I try to be very clear with their expectations. Like I say to them, this isn't going to be quick. I break it down into stages, and then I say, this might be phase one. This is what phase two will look like. This is what phase three will look like. So it's not going to be like something that can be done in a week. It's not a single day training session. It's a really in-depth look at the organization as a whole, finding those really critical pain points, and then working on those to make things better for the organization as a whole without causing too much destruction and disruption. I meant to say disruption. But yeah, so that they can continue doing what it is that the organization does, while at the same time know that there are things working in the background to make it better going forward. And involving people along the way, making sure you're talking to the right people along the way.
And that all of that makes so much sense. Do you find it challenging working remotely? I explained to the audience in your introduction, you're based in the Flinders Ranges, but you're working with clients across Australia. So how do you find that? And has that been a challenge with organizations to accept and understand? Again, it's something a bit left of center that they may not be used to. What's that been like?
It really again, it depends on the organization and the people that I'm working with. Some people are really good. They're very open, transparent. It's easy to tell who they are and what they like just from, a Zoom call, or even sometimes just a phone call. But then other times you go, you know what, I really need to come in. I need to I need to get a feel for you, right? And I can only do that if we're sitting in a room together. Do you know what I mean? So quite often I always try to meet with my clients on a regular basis in person. And if, depending on what the organization is, sometimes, I need to make myself available to be in the office working with the people that I need to be working with in person, right? Sort of like these hyper focused brainstorming sessions, right? So we can just get all our thoughts out, get it all out, and then just kind of, have a mind map going on the board, and like just kind of deconstruct and reconstruct in real time together. Like that I have found really beneficial for those really particular complex situations. But then again, like I said, other times, people just need, they just want someone to make suggestions about how they can do something better. And so I might make those suggestions, and then we can test them, and we can do all of that remotely. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. Do you think that being in the Flinders Ranges has influenced and inspired some of your work?
Yes. I think yes, and no. I think my work has been inspired predominantly through my experience growing up. I grew up in regional South Australia. I had, in a very tight-knit, community-focused region. And then, when I was about 12 years old, I kind of experienced my first culture shock, like really proper culture shock, where everything just felt like it was upside down and wrong. And that was just because we moved from my hometown to another town, and they did things differently. And that was probably my first culture shock. and then there was the culture shock of then moving away to go to university. And so I came to realize that that life is actually about constant change, where things are changing all the time. We wake up in the morning, we don't know what the day holds for us. And so I guess the way that I approach things is I try to remember that constantly. Like, someone might be in a bad mood, and context is everything, right? That's kind of my motto. Context is everything, for everyone. And we need to, so I think about that, and I'm very conscious of that every day when I sit down to do my work. Because it's built from experience, lifelong experience, up until, like, I've had some awful jobs, Maryanne, and I think what what needed to happen, and I think back, like, a lot of reflective practice. I think back to that situation that was so upsetting and so traumatizing for me, and I think, what was it about that situation in that job that made me feel that way? And what did they need to do, or what could they have done to avoid that from happening? And that is, that's from my own personal experience. And these are the questions that I ask people as well when I sit down to work with them, that I'll ask my clients. I'll say, what is it that's really at the core of the issues? Tell me about it. Tell me your story. Tell me why you're here, what your experience has been like, how working here makes you feel, right? And let's go from there and see, what do we need to do to make things work better for you and everyone else. So
absolutely. And I mean, I too have had some nightmare workplace experience, and I think it just adds, our personal experience just adds to the passion of this work. And I'm interested now to ask you, when you think about what a healthy workplace is, what does that mean to you now?
for me, I think it's very much about workplaces being a community, right? So we all have our people, and we all have our identities, and our identities are in part shaped by the people that we spend our time with. Like, we relate to people, and we associate with people, and we fit ourselves into different groups, right? And we can have multiple identities at the same time. And so I try to think about the workplace as one of those groups or communities that we actually fit in. And so I think about, well, how does community work? How do groups work? What is it that makes people feel like they belong in a group, right? And I want people, when they go to work, to feel like that they actually belong there, that they're contributing, that the work that they're doing is not only creating value for the organization that they're working with, but also for themselves personally, right? So, like, at the end of the day, they can say, yeah, I had a great day today. I had some challenges, but overall, it was a great day. I got through my to-do list. Or if I didn't get through to my to-do list, that's okay. I can finish those other things off tomorrow. So I want people to feel empowered by the work that they are doing, because sometimes people go like, they'll move from one job into another job, into another job. Do you know what I mean? Because they're always looking for something, but they don't really know what it is that they're looking for. They just haven't been able to find that. And I think that comes down to just the old ways of thinking about workplace culture. Like, we need to start thinking about the workplace in a different way, which is, very focused on people and the human experience, and understanding that, people don't exist in a vacuum, right? Yeah. There's multiple things happening to an individual on a daily basis. But if they can look at work as a type of reprieve or an empowering exercise, then that is really, really what I want to be able to achieve. And I think that's something that organizations need to think about in the future. Like I said, we've got new generations entering the workplace. Do you know what I mean? And if we don't start thinking about ways that we're able to keep those people, then organizations are going to age, they're going to be outdated, they're not going to keep up with the times, and they're going to be left behind. Like you either evolve or you know, or you don't. You get
Yeah.
left behind get left by the wayside. So yeah, that's kind of what I try to think about workplaces, that I want people to feel like a sense of community, a sense of belonging, that these are their people, that the people who are in that community, in that organization with them will support them no matter what. That there's mutual respect, there's mutual understanding for each other as people. Like, do you know what I mean? Making that human connection, that at the end of the day, we're all human, we're all flawed, and we all have multiple things going on all at once. But how can we use all of that to also make the workplace a rewarding and empowering experience at the same time?
Oh, so true, so true. I mean, you're talking my language, lady. So I'm right there with you. You know, that's what it looks like for me too. And I if for any leaders who are listening, for any organizations that are contemplating looking at reviewing their processes and their systems, because they know there is blocks, there might be conflict, there might be opportunity. What's a good first step for them? What would you recommend?
A good first step is having a really good conversation with the people that you're working with. So, like, just saying, hey, just being open and honest. Like, you know what, I feel like maybe there's some things here that aren't working as efficiently or as best as they could be. Um, and I'm thinking about maybe we need to tweak a few things and just put it out there, get it out in the open, like voice it, and see what other people say. Like there will more than likely be people who, those people who are kind of, well, change, no, right? So there's going to be those people who are going to be, hey, I don't see nothing wrong. I think we should just continue doing what we're doing. But if you at least get it out there, it gets people thinking about it, and people go, you know what, I kind of feel the same way. I'm so glad someone mentioned it. And then it starts the conversation. Start having the conversation once you are having, these discussions with people, and it might be one-on-one or it might be in a group situation, then you can maybe start having a brainstorming session about some of the solutions. Like, start with your people, start with the people that you actually work with, so that you kind of get a sense of how everyone else is feeling at the same time. And, I kind of also at the same time, I think, most systems can't have like a 10-year lifespan. And that's a generational thing as well, right? So like you can embed a system now, and it should last you at least 10 years. And then at that 10-year stage, you might need to start thinking about changing it as well. And that's something really important for organizations to start building into their strategic planning, is actually keeping their systems and processes relevant for the people that will be coming into the organization, and also the changing technology as well. As people come in, as technology improves, we need to make sure that we're always keeping up with it, because we don't want to make ourselves redundant.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So, and like I said, it's that whole thing. You either evolve or you get left behind.
Yeah, so true. My final question to you, Miss Sarah, is what do you love most about being a heart-led leader?
It's the people that I get to work with. So I have made some amazing connections, and I have learned so much from, like, they've brought me in to solve a problem, so to speak. But like the connections that I've been able to make with these people, because, I take the time to hear their stories. They take the time to listen to mine. We bounce ideas off of one another, and they're able to experience in real time how different approach works.
Yeah.
And also I get to see how that impacts them, right? I see them come out of their shell. I see them being more open and transparent, not only with the people that they're leading, but also with the people that lead them. Do you know what I mean? So there's more transparency, there's more openness and conversation. They're not afraid, they become less afraid, they're more empowered. Like I said, it's that empowerment thing again. And that just gives me so much joy to go through this journey of getting to know someone in this particular environment and just seeing their development as we work through from start of the project through to the end of the project. That is my absolute joy. And it's why I keep coming back, even despite all the challenges. And, there are setbacks, right? I'm a realist, there are setbacks. But, and some people are not going to like my approach and they will question it constantly. But it's the proof is in the pudding. When I get to see that, and then I have people saying to me, wow, that system that you helped develop or the way that team is working now is just phenomenal. This process is world class. And I'm just like, wow, that I never expected that. I don't go into projects expecting that. I just want to make life easier for people. Do you know what I mean? Like try and help people in that sense to make things a little bit easier. And then to get that feedback, it's like, well, yeah, that's really enjoy. It's such a nice feeling. It's such a nice feeling to know that what I've been able to do and assist with has actually I've been able to pull it off, and that is just such a good feeling.
I love that so much. You are such a gorgeous human. I love spending time with you, not just obviously on this podcast, but externally as well. You get it, and your impact in organizations is remarkable, and you should be really proud of that work. That's a legacy, an important legacy that you're creating and will leave as well, which is just absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me
Thank you,
today on the
Maryanne.
show. Yeah, it's been so good.
It has been absolutely amazing speaking to you. Like I said, like just being able to speak to someone else who understands and gets it. Like sometimes I think you and I probably come up against people quite often that are a little bit stuck in the status quo. And so finding people who do get it and speak your language and enjoy this process of embracing change and making workplaces better is just so, this in itself is also very rewarding. So, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're so welcome. And I'm sure I'll have you back on again soon because there'll be more for us to dissect. We have we view change management and culture in a very similar way. And so I know we've talked about recruitment and all sorts of different prongs. So maybe we can talk about that next and the impact there. But again, when it comes to culture, there are lots of different prongs that are impacting, and you're focused on the systems and the processes. I'm focused on more around the communication and then the dysfunction and the energy in the organization, but all of it is important. And then there's the individual. There's so many different areas that are being impacted, and the fact that we can see opportunity together as well. So when I look at your work, I don't think, oh no, that's another competitor. Not at all. The more hands-on.
Absolutely not. No,
the more
exactly.
hands on deck, the better it is, because my intent is for global transformation. So the sooner that happens, the better this world is going to be, the more respite and relief we're all going to feel. And you are heart-centered. You care about people. You've expressed that so beautifully today in our conversation. So it is easy to celebrate you and showcase this work. And I look forward to more cool, deeper chats as time goes on.
Yes. So do I, Maryanne. So do I. And, picking your brain and brainstorming with you about ideas as well. Like you said, it's not competition. It's always collaboration over competition. And sometimes, even in a workplace, people need to understand you're not competing with each other. You're collaborating with each other. So that's something that I'm really excited to discover more with you as well.
Love that. What a beautiful way to end this show today.
Thank you.